let's do the collective energy reading this week. This week, something different happening. We are experiencing a big event astrologically. So I'm going to go over some details and give the astrology its own little section this week. We have a total solar eclipse in the sign of Leo approaching. So we're going to start to feel those energies, and I'm going to go through what that could possibly bring, and it's some pretty big things, so that could play out in the collective or for you personally. So as always with the forecaster oracle, 3 sections. First section I'm going to touch on the astrology because we had that important event happening. I'm then going to be doing the predictive / collective energy with the forecaster, and then how to best navigate these energies with the personal predictions oracle. So just going through some of the things that came up last week. Last week was really intense with the reading, so I don't know what this week's going to bring. But last week was definitely an escalation in the war between the US and Iran, and we did have some earthquakes throughout the week as well. I did this reading last week on the 16th, which in the Northern Hemisphere. On the 17th, on the Northern Hemisphere, we had a major earthquake, 7.3. Then we had a lot of activity in South America right through the week. Lots of 5.2, 5.7, 5.6 magnitude earthquakes, basically every day in South America. So today, which is the 25th of July in the Southern Hemisphere and the 24th of July in the Northern Hemisphere, we've had a few more earthquakes, and they're getting larger. So we've had 5.7s in Argentina as well as New Zealand, and then we've just recently, only about 4 hours ago, as of the time I'm doing this reading, we had a 6.0 magnitude in Vanuatu. So it's been quite a week for earthquake activity, and also escalating tension within the war. So it did explain that very intense energy that we were feeling in the cards last week. So let's get on to the reading for this week, which will be from the 26th of July right through for the next 7 days. So this is the chart for the 13th of July here in the Southern Hemisphere, which will be the 12th in the Northern Hemisphere. And this is when we have this upcoming total solar eclipse in the sign of Leo. Now I'm going to just give you a little brief, show you what that means, what an eclipse really is. Now we have the nodes here, South Node in Leo, it's at 29 degrees, so it's about to change signs. And we have on its opposite axis, we have the North Node in Aquarius. So we're going into a eclipse season, which means we'll have a pair of eclipses. The first one is the beginning or mid August, and the last one will be the end of August, so a two-week difference, and that gives the time for the moon to go back around opposite, where it will be a full moon, and it will be another eclipse down there on the full moon. But for now, for this one that I'm focusing on today is for the 13th, and that will be a new moon. And that means that the sun and the moon come together in degrees over here, so they're basically together, and they're causing a new moon. Now we have this event happen every month. Every month the moon travels around and catches up to the sun and becomes a new moon each month. But why it's eclipse is because it's falling on the nodes, which is the shadow of the moon and where the shadow hits the earth. So and when we have that new moon on the node, that's when we have an eclipse. The same as when we have when the moon moves around down here, it'll be sitting on opposite the sun, and it will be a full moon, and it will be sitting on the north node. So the one I'm focusing on today is south node. Now, south node traits will be things like past events, past identities, your past ego releasing and letting go of certain things. The sun represents your visibility, your how you're seen in the world. Leo is ruled by the sun. Now, Leo represents, again, visibility. It represents leadership. It represents shining in your own light. So it's a sign where we see clarity, and we see perhaps events in the world. We start to see beneath the shadows. We start to see, because we're hitting the south node shadow, which is the moon's shadow, we may start to see clarity on what's really going on in the world, what is hidden beneath the surface, what is really playing out backstage. So that could be something that we could see happening over this period, and we're starting to come into the energy of the eclipse. South node can represent things like past life patterns that you may need to release and let go of, old identities that may no longer suit you or fit you that you will need to let go of, ego attachments you could be letting go of. This is showing you what you need to evolve and release, both collectively and individually. It could mean that because it's sitting so closely, or this is the south node here, it could say that old roles may start to fall away with this event. Now, depending on your own personal birth chart and how closely this falls on your, say for instance, if you are a Leo ascendant, if this is towards the end of Leo for your ascendant degree, then you're really going to feel this in a very big way. So will Aquarius, and so will the other signs. So the other fire signs, as well as the other fixed signs, will feel this. Now, I'm going to be going sign by sign over on my Cosmic Trish channel if you want to see how this eclipse is going to be affecting you personally. But for this reading, we're doing a collective reading. The collective themes that we may be looking at for the leading up into the eclipse and just after the eclipse, or right through, I guess, to the eclipse season, which is the end of August. But we're starting to feel this energy now in this week ahead. That's why I'm adding it into the collective energy reading for this week. We could be seeing something going on with leadership shifts, changes, resignations, perhaps change in leadership, because Leos make great leaders, so it does really represent leadership qualities, and it's releasing leaders, releasing old patterns around old types of leadership, or could be also, this could be heads of state, public figures, it can be monarchies as well, anything that represents leadership. This total eclipse in Leo historically correlate the sudden changes in leadership or a dramatic pivot in political direction. So it's going to be a big one for the collective energy this week. It also gives you revelations around corruption, as I said when I said that it's going to shine a light and bring clarity to things that's happening backstage or happening beneath the surface, and they're the things that I love to dive into. This could be things like misuse of authority, ego-driven power, because we're talking sun, we're talking Leo, we're talking ego energy. And these are things that we need to release, because the south node is the things that we've come from or old, and the north node represents the things we're moving into. So we're having to release these kind of things, especially around identity and around ego. And this is leadership as well. Now, the fifth house, Leo represents astrologically rules the fifth house, and fifth house things are things like how you find your joy, your creative expression, creativity, and children. So we may see something going on in these areas as well. And what's interesting is in the last 2 weeks, I've pulled the education card 3 times in predictive readings. Nothing's happened with it yet, and then I see that we're in the fifth house eclipse, and that can represent children. So there may be something going on around the education system coming up over in this eclipse period. Now, the Leo represents heart, and the moon also represents heart, and we've got that conjunction there with the sun and the moon representing your emotions or physical heart as well. And this may bring in some talk or conversation, expression around health, well-being, or heart kind of energy. This can be your vitality, it can be emotional well-being, it can be things like wellness. Now, and what is interesting right now is talks going on with around peptides and the grey market and whether they're put back on the compound list. And these are things that they're trying to get control of right now. So we may see some escalation around that, either trying to get control of the grey market of peptides or trying to make changes because we're moving away and releasing old systems. So maybe we're moving into a new age when it comes to health and well-being because of this eclipse. It could be a catalyst which causes something to do around health or education or leaders, change in leadership. I'm going to leave that reading there. I just wanted to make it a little bit brief on the astrology and just show you why we have eclipses and what could be possibly taking place with the sign of Leo and the eclipse in Leo. So let's move on to the actual collective reading. So first of all, I want to bring your attention to the perception deception. So just be aware of what is playing out in the media, be aware of what's being covered up, be aware of the distraction where they're getting us to look here when something else is developing over here. It's the reality override. It's about where you put your perception, also being able to look at a situation from an outside point of view, and you are responsible for where you put your energy, where you put your perception here. And this card is indicating that we need to be aware of what we're looking at and be open to acknowledge if we're being deceived. Now what's interesting is the sun in Leo, so the new moon coming up in Leo that will form the eclipse will bring a little clarity to the things that we've been deceived about, what's going on in the background or where we're being deceived. So that's coming, and this card here is saying that we need to start to open our eyes about what's real and what's not real. It's an eyes open kind of week. Now what's going on here is something is under review, something that's being done perhaps within the US and Iran war. There could be some scrutiny around how that's being handled or the paperwork that's involved or done or not done, and making sure that things have been done in the correct way, because there's a bit of scrutiny here around if things have been done in the correct way. We have over here by itself the diplomatic fallout tension card, which is going to show more tension over this week, but it doesn't feel to be quite as bad as last week. Here we're just seeing a bit of a diplomatic fallout. Now it's almost like things are not going the way as intended when it comes to this crisis with the Iran and US. There seems to be a little bit of a diplomatic fallout. Now this could be involving Saudi Arabia coming into the mix here as well. There could be a little bit of diplomatic fallout when it comes to Israel and Saudi Arabia that I'm seeing for this week ahead, because they're trying to do some kind of policy and trying to get things sorted, but there's still a little bit of deception that's underneath these policies or this agreement between Israel and Saudi Arabia. It's all connected to what's playing out with this war. And until those things get sorted out, we're not really going to get things sorted out in this war for this war to end. But we see a tactical maneuver taking place here and a change of course. This change of course has been coming up in the last couple of days that I've done this. Within the last, say, 7 days, I've been seeing a change of course that's happening. Change of course within the way or the direction that the war is taking. Now, whether that means they are looking for allies or they're looking to improve a situation or they're looking to change its course in some way. Course change also could be connected to changing course or for shipping routes and looking at what's going on in other shipping courses or shipping lanes, and that I feel is where we're getting some indication of where Saudi Arabia is coming into the picture here. It's Saudi oil that's being transported through these shipping lanes, but they're having to change course or shift focus onto not just the Strait of Hormuz. There could be a tactical play or maneuver to change course or change how we're able to ship resources around the world. So looking for an innovative solution perhaps to make progress when it comes to shipping lanes and getting things moving with resources. I do see some more drone activity taking place. We've been seeing a lot of that in the last week or two, and there'll be a lot more drone activity this week. Now this, as I said, it's developing now, it's in motion, and that's not going to change for the week ahead. We're still going to be seeing more of that. Developing now in motion means it's happening right now as I'm doing this reading, and it's been happening for the last week or so, or a little longer, about a week or two here. We're seeing a lot more escalating tension or energy around drone activity. Again, we're seeing the shelterless crisis. I brushed over this one last week. It came up in last week's reading, and because there was so much tense energy, I kind of brushed this one. I didn't go into too much depth with this, but it's here again this week. So it's important. There's something going on around a crisis, around the displacement of people. And they're looking for an innovative solution to progress through that situation when it comes to the displacement of people. So not so much leadership. Here we're seeing the leadership energy and the tactical maneuvers, the power plays, and to change their course a little bit, whether we're talking about shipping routes or we're talking about the direction they're taking the war. There's a little bit of changing course that's coming up here. But here I see this innovative solution or progress trying to focus on the people and the displacement of people. Now, how do they go in a tactical way with drone activity, structural damage, that kind of thing, without displacing civilians and people? So it's really coming into the energy this week of people being affected by the drone activity when it comes to structures being damaged, such as bridges, or being able to move around or get around, or their homes being displaced from their homes. So a little bit of, as I said, diplomatic fallout this week around that. I feel Saudi Arabia is connected to this as well this week, as well as Israel. I feel there's a connection there. It's not just US trying to get involved and make deals between the two. That result in a diplomatic fallout this week. It's not going the way they're hoping it would go. So there's going to be a little bit more tension. It's like they've got to go back to the books here. It's how do we get this across a line? How do we get them to agree to everything we need them to agree to? It's a bit of ego energy here I'm feeling, especially when we've got this eclipse coming in Leo, where we're seeing a battle of wills, or a battle of egos when it comes to leaders. That would be Israel, Iran, US, and now Saudi Arabia in the mix as well, to do with the nuclear agreement that they're trying to make, and the recognition or the normalization of relationships between Saudi Arabia and Israel that's taking place. But this reality override, this perception deception, I think it's asking to open your eyes to what else is playing out. It's not just about the movement of resources across from Saudi Arabia or from the Middle East into the rest of the globe. There's a little bit more that's taking place, and this perception deception is saying we need to open our eyes to see that there's a lot more to this than just oil being moved through shipping routes. And until we get some kind of diplomatic agreement, we're not going to be able to find a tactical way, or we're not going to be able to see this come to a conclusion. But we are seeing a tactical maneuver or a power play which involves changing course this week. So while the cards don't feel as intense as what they did last week, I am feeling that there is a lot playing out in the background, and I feel like with this upcoming eclipse we're going to start to get a glimpse of why we're in this war, why oil prices are going up, why cost of living is going up. We all feel this around the globe. Every country feels this in the way that our quality of living through economic purposes, and rising freight costs and rising fuel costs, and the transportation and of distribution of our groceries. All these things go up, so it really does affect us all on a very personal level. And it's just, I think that we're going to start to see that it's not just as simple as opening the strait or agreeing just with Iran. I think there's a lot more going on in the background, and I'm hoping this eclipse will start to bring some light to the other maneuvers that are taking place here with this energy. But for the week ahead, I feel the energy not quite as intense as last week, but we do see a need to change course. We will see some diplomatic fallout when it comes to one of those 4 countries that I mentioned and their game of chess that they are playing with each other and looking for a solution here. So they're having to go back to the books to try and find a way through this, because there's some underlying deception that's taking place. And I think everybody's starting to have their eyes open as to what deception is being trying to push underneath the surface here. And I feel that's coming to light both for everybody, for the people that's involved in it, the countries that are involved, but also for the people starting to have their eyes open to why they're playing this little war game, what's happening here. And I understand and I sympathize with everybody that's affected here with this. I know everybody around the globe is affected in some way or another, but the people that's actually involved in the drone strikes and the actual tense activity, my heart goes out to each and every one of them. I'm not disregarding the intensity of the life that they're experiencing. I'm just saying there's a lot more to it than what we're just seeing on the surface, and hopefully it will start to come to light what's actually going on and why this game is actually being played, because it is one big chessboard about moving the pieces around and getting access and gaining control of, I guess, resources, but getting control of the entire situation. And nobody's willing to bend. Nobody's willing to give up their part. It's a very big battle of the wills. It's a battle of the egos that's taking place. And that's going to be more tense as we get closer to this eclipse energy in Leo. So let's take a look at what we can do personally. So for personal energy that's coming up, and how to navigate the upcoming challenges, and how this eclipse is going to affect us on a personal level. As I said, I'm going to go sign by sign on my Cosmic Trishe channel if you want to know how you will be affected based on your ascendant signs. Also, your sun and moon is connected there as well. But what I'm seeing is it's a time of reflection. It's how the micro mirrors the macro, or how the collective energy globally reflects the energy personally. So it's all connected. Now, what they're saying here is that on a personal level, you can focus on your own career advancements or your own advancements, working your way through this with your own energy. Now, this bubble energy is saying that sometimes it's safest just to protect yourself with white light of love and protection, but also just go into your own little bubble, focus on your own little world, what it is that you can advance through, what it is you can improve, the things that you need to reflect on within your life, without focusing too much on the challenging energy or within the collective energy or within the globe, what's taking place in the world right now. This is the card of meditation, so it's a beautiful time to go within. The other thing with the eclipse I'm noticing here is that we could be talking about leadership, because Leo represents leadership. So we could be talking about bosses through work, or we could be talking about leading hands. We could be talking about people, or even ego clashes in your workplace. Doesn't have to be your workplace, but this card here of career is coming up. So for some of you, it will definitely affect your career house. Others could be challenges around egos and people just struggling to meet in the middle. And the other thing there is the letting go of old identities as well. So changes coming, or challenges ahead lie in changing who you are, your identity, who you are. So for some of this is going to be, the eclipse will trigger that energy of moving from one thing that you've always done that's allowed you to shine your light and it lights you up, to move towards something else, because this eclipse energy can represent release, and it can represent releasing the things that no longer allow your heart to shine. So I'm feeling this energy could be for some of you. You're moving into either something more creative, because this is quite a creative card, and Leo does represent the fifth house of creativity. So you're moving into something that is more aligned to your creativity, allows you to express yourself more fully and enjoy what you do. It's connected to heart energy here. So we're seeing that there's a need to release things personally throughout this next couple of weeks while we see this eclipse season. So some of you will be releasing your old identity, who you once were, in favor of something that's more aligned with who you're moving into and who you're becoming. So we're moving from this south node energy, which is where the eclipse is taking place, into the north node energy, which is where the eclipse will be at the end of the month. So there's a bit of releasing past lives, or the past versions of you, so that things that no longer align to your expression or creative expression or who you really are. So while this stuff is taking place in the world, it's important to protect your energy, focus on what's important to you, focus on making these moves, because you will be affected through this eclipse as well, not just collectively, but personally you're going to feel this. So focus on what it is, what identities you need to release. What if you need to release ego energy, if you need to release situations where you're butting heads with other people's egos, causing challenges. So there's a bit of releasing that needs to take place here. So spend this time reflecting on what it is that you would like to do moving forward, away from the past versions of you, and releasing the things that no longer fit with you. So there's a bit of meditation, there's a bit of reflection in the next coming weeks. But what lights you up, what makes your heart feel full, what allows you to have creative expression is the things you're focusing on with this solar eclipse in Leo. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you all have a beautiful week ahead, and I'll see you again next week.